All right, folks, let's go ahead and make our slide blocks that are going to move back and forth. If you remember the video, there was a little crank that moved around, and then there's slide blocks that move back and forth. So we're going to make those next. So as always, you've logged into Onshape, you've gone into your Cougar JID Semester 2, and then gone into your Trammel Toy project. There's our base plate. Last time we worked on a drill block. So we're going to go ahead and start a new part studio today. Create part studio. Now, before we get going with this, let's go ahead and right click on that and rename, and we're going to call it slide blocks. And we're calling it slide blocks because we're going to make two at the same time in here. We're getting smarter now. We're putting some parts together that we'll deal with later. Let's go ahead and sketch on the top view. Right click, new sketch. As always, P hides the planes and N views normal to the sketch plane. All right, now there are two slider blocks that we're going to be looking at and building, and they're very similar to each other. The first is going to be this. Let me get this in the right spot here. All right, the first is going to be a this thing called a screw slide block. Okay, and the next is going to be a pin slide block. Now, I want you to notice, like, look at some of these dimensions: 0.734, 0.367, 0.141, so on and so forth. And let's look at these. Oh, look, it's basically the same thing. Okay, so we're going to not reinvent the wheel here. We're going to make one of them, and then we are going to make the other one based on that one. Okay, so let's go ahead and do this. Now, I think the first thing to do, now when you have chamfers and stuff like this, things that are fillets, chamfers, stuff that in the real world would be shaved off or rounded over, we're going to do that last. So we're going to make just a couple little blocks here, and I will explain that as we go along. All right, so here we go. We are in our slide blocks part studio. I'm going to have to go back and forth here. We're sketching on the top plane, corner to corner rectangle, and that rectangle is going to be 0.734 wide and 1.75 long. Here we go. And we're going to make our rectangle. It is 1.75 long. Enter 0.741, I think is what it was. The other way, let's make sure of that. 0.734, wow, I don't know where I came from on that one. So let's go back. Double click on that, 0.734. There we go. Double check that again. Let's make sure. Okay, cool. Now, I'm going to do this in kind of a tricky way because both of these are kind of extruded upward. So I'm going to do this other one in here, which is, it's 1.141 in on each side, but the same length. So let's make another rectangle that is, and I'm going to do it, you'll understand the method to my madness in just a moment. I'm going to draw it up off of here. So it doesn't matter really where it is. In fact, I don't want it to be lined up. If you have yellow things lining up with it that show up like that, just hit the shift key before you do that and it should go away. So it is going to be 0.75, whoops, I'm sorry, 1.75 long. Enter. Now the other one is going to be 0.734 minus, I believe it was 0.141. Let's look again. 0.141 times 2. Let's be fancy about it. Oops, I lost it when I went back. I can go dimension, click on there. 0.734 minus, watch the fanciness here. We're going to put it in parentheses, 0.141 times 2. I believe times is the asterisk. Times 2. We'll find out. Enter. There we go. Looks good. Okay. So let me double check that that was 0.141 on each side. Yes. Cool. Now, the reason why I did it off of here is to lock them together in the midpoints is really, really easy. So we're just going to do a coincident constraint. Actually, I need to put points in first. Choose point. I want to put a point at the midpoint of that one. Little square shows up. And the midpoint of this one, little square shows up. And we're going to now use coincident constraint and lock this one to that one. All right. Now, this next part's going to be a little tricky. We're going to finish our sketch. Tilt a little bit so that you can see what's happening. Extrude. Now we're going to extrude just these outside parts. I'll explain why in just a moment. We're going to extrude just those two. Okay. No, I take that back because I don't want them being separate parts. Let's scratch that. Okay. Watch this. We're going to extrude just the middle. All right. So the middle part is extruded at a distance of 0.844. So we're going to extrude to 0.844. Okay, good. Now, sketch is still there. Turn it back on. And now we are going to extrude the outsides to 0.355. Extrude this and that. You can actually kind of see through it if you get to the right spot. There, that to, what was it, 0.355? Yes, 0.355. Now, before you hit enter, we want to make sure that we're adding and not creating new parts. I want to add it to what's already there. Enter gives me a preview. Good. All right, and we're looking good so far. I can now turn off this sketch because I don't need it anymore. The origin point always is annoying to me. I'm going to turn that off too. All right, we're looking good. So our next thing is that we are going to now do those little chamfers that are here, 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 here. It looks like it is a 0.25. TYP means typical. So 0.25 by 0.25 typical means that everywhere you see a chamfer, it's going to be 1/8 by 1/8. So here we go. Let's go into our slide blocks. We're going to choose the chamfer tool. There's chamfer. Now we're going to do equal distance because it's the same on both sides of 0.125. And we're going to choose all 8 of those edges. That one, that one, that one, that one, and the same on the other side. That one, that one, that one, and that one. Okay, so all 8 of those edges, and good. All right, cool. Now, here's where we need to stop and think a little bit because we've got a screw slide block that's got this hexagonal hole in it for the head of a bolt to fit into with another hole going through it. But the other pin slide block is similar, but the hole is different, and then it's got these filleted edges also. So before we move on, we need to duplicate this. So we're going to do it rather than duplicate the part. We'll do it in the same studio here. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a plane. Now I want a little separation just to make it easier. So I'm going to create a plane. we're going to create an offset plane, and we're going to go just from this face right here and come out a little bit. So make it so it's just not touching. The distance does not matter at all, okay? Because we are about to mirror a part. So we're going to come up here to mirror, and we are going to mirror. We're going to do a part mirror, and we're going to mirror part 1, okay? The mirror plane is going to be the plane that we just made, but we do want a new part, okay? So it's going to make part 2. Cool. All right. Now, we can, if you want, let's go ahead and rename this part. Let's do the first part as, we're going to rename as slide. No, let's call it screw, because there's going to be a screw going into it. Slide block. Okay. And then we will do this one over here. Rename it as pin slide block. All right, and you can make them whatever color you want. Just right click, edit appearance, and you can do whatever you feel like for each one of them. Cool. Edit appearance. Oh, I like purple. All right. It's Barney slide blocks. If any of you don't know what that means, I'm going to cry if I'm that old. Okay, let's make some holes on the bottom of these. We're going to start with the one that's here that is a regular hexagon that is 0.386 to sides. It goes to a depth of 0.255. And there's also a hole in the middle. Now, this center line here has 2 meanings. It means that it is not only is it showing the center line, but it also shows that it's in the center. Although we do have a dimension to the center point of that hole. So let's put a point there that is 0.367 in and 0.875 in. Here we go. I'm going to put a sketch on here. Let's view normal within. Now let's see which way it goes. It flipped it that way. That's okay. I'm going to use my arrows just to get it horizontal here. And I'm going to put a point in. Now, I could dimension it, but I happen to know that those numbers are in the center. So if we line up to both of those things at the same time, I know that I'm right in the middle. Click. Okay. And black shows that I'm lined up with those things. Let's start by doing our small circle. And I don't recall the size of that. Let's take another look. The hole is showing 0.177. So let's dimension this to 0.177. And then I'm going to make my hexagon right now, which is, okay, now by default it is a hexagon. Now it's going to be a little weird to get this lined up. I'm going to make sure it is in just a moment. So I'm going to get it about right and click. Okay, now when you hover around, it'll change sides. I want 6. Okay. And now I'm going to line up vertically. Come up here to your constraint menu, vertical constraint between this point and that point. See it move just a little bit. Now I'm making sure I'm right. And finally, I'm going to dimension that to 0.386 across the flats. So we're going to dimension from this side to that side 0.386. I hope I can get my numbers right. I can forget things pretty easy from the time I looked at it. 0.386. Good. All right. So I've got my sketch. Now we're going to finish it. We're going to do some extruding. So we're going to extrude. Now this inside guy is going to be removed, okay? And we're going to go through all, okay? Instead of we're removing it through all. Good. Now the sketch disappeared. Let's go turn it back on to get the hexagon. And now we are going to extrude the hexagon, remove to a depth of 0.255. Oops. No, we are going blind. To depth of 0.255. Enter. Looks good. Cool. All right, let's turn off that sketch. Don't need to see it anymore. And the screw slide block is now done. Now all we need is to do the pin slide block. And by the way, this is why we have a bottom view, so it can show you the hole call out here. So we have a hole going through it. Now this time we'll make a hole instead of drawings. So let's go back to the slide block. We're going to sketch on this surface this time. And for normal, this time it's the way I want it to be. We're going to put a point there again. And we're again going to hover around until I'm lined up with the midpoint there and the midpoint there. Click. Okay. And this time I'm going to finish my sketch. And I'm going to put a hole in that thing. Hole on this point. Okay. Somehow it remembered the last counter bore hole I put in. It'll do that. It'll remember what you did last time, assuming you want to make the same thing. But it's a little bit different. Let's make sure we got the numbers right. It is a, whoops, wrong one. It is a 0.165 through. Let's start with that. So the whole thing is a 0.165 and it goes through. So let's go ahead and choose through instead of blind up here. The counter bore has a diameter of 0.177 going to a depth of 0.633. It has a diameter of 0.177 going to a depth of 0.233. See, I forget already. 0.633. All right, it goes to a depth of 0.633. Pretty deep counter bore. Enter will get me a little preview. Remember, if things turn red, it means you're doing something impossible that can't happen. And check. And let's look at the bottom just to make sure it does have a counter bore. It's a really skinny little counter bore. But that's okay because that's what the pin is supposed to fit into. Our counter bore is 0.177. So yeah, it's not that much bigger. So it's okay that it looks weird like that. All right, done with the slide blocks. I'm going to turn off this plane because I don't need to see it anymore. Let's go ahead and let's do this just to show that you've got your counter bores correct. Let's go ahead and yeah, let's do a kind of a bottom view of these. So go ahead and flip it like that so that you can see the bottom to take your image of this that shows that you've got your hexagonal cutout there on the bottom. Take your picture. We're good to go. Next time we're going to do corner blocks. All right. Thank you and see you next time.